Hello everyone, Floyd here. Today I want to talk about the SWAT-T tourniquet. That stands for stretch, wrap, and tuck. Now I talked about this on Wade Harrison's podcast, and I thought I would do a quick demonstration for you. Now this is probably the most multi-purpose bleeding control tool that you can carry with you in your dry bag as a paddler. Is it the best tourniquet? No, but it is an effective tourniquet. The best tourniquet is probably a combat application tourniquet, a CAT tourniquet, but that serves a single purpose. And when you're doing an overnighter or just want something to lug around every time you get into your kayak or on your vessel, um, then you don't want to, have to carry a CAT tourniquet with you everywhere. And sometimes space is just limited. So this is a lightweight option that serves for multiple purposes other than just bleeding control. So it's a fairly cheap device. You can even carry multiple of them. And because it serves multiple purposes, it will reduce how much other gear that you have to carry. So your first aid bag can have less in it with this one thing. So bleeding control is extremely important. Now you want to place a tourniquet if there is life-threatening bleeding to an extremity, all right? Of course, we can't tourniquet the neck. We can't tourniquet this section or in your groin. So we call those junctional areas, and you have to pack those with gauze in order to stop the bleeding or apply direct pressure. So if I've got a bleeding on my extremity here, I'm going to initially apply direct pressure, all right? If I put forceful direct pressure on that wound and it continues to bleed, that's when I need to consider a tourniquet, all right? Now, there are a lot of myths about tourniquets. Historically, people thought if you put a tourniquet on, you would lose a limb. We know that's not true. You can safely leave a tourniquet on for hours without that person losing a limb. And generally that's going to be enough time for you to evacuate that victim to get them to a hospital or to get them at least to EMS or other trained responders. So how do we use this tourniquet? Well, it's just basically like a big elastic rubber band. It's almost like a resistance band. I mean, technically you could probably work out on the river if you wanted to. But if you look at it, it tells you exactly how to use it. This applies circumferential pressure around the extremity. And with each wrap, you have to stretch it really tight before you wrap it around again. All right. So it's got these graphics on it that show you when you've stretched it tight enough. So when this oval here becomes a circle like this, that's when you know you've stretched it tight enough. And basically you just stretch it really, really tight. So let's imagine I was bleeding here. I'm going to put it above the wound. So if I'm bleeding here, I want it above the wound. If I'm bleeding here, I'm going to go above the knee because you don't want to put a tourniquet on the joint. But if I'm bleeding here, then I have to put it here. Now, if I'm bleeding here around my ankle, I don't necessarily want to put it on my thigh because it is harder to get the tourniquet effect where you terminate all blood going distally, okay? It is much easier to get enough pressure around that extremity to occlude the arteries on a two bone compartment as opposed to a single bone compartment, just because there's more tissue on the upper portions of your extremities. But I'm going to demonstrate on my thigh, and if you have to do it, then you need to try it, right? So if I'm bleeding here, if I have life-threatening bleeding from above my knee that can't be controlled with direct pressure, then I'm going to apply a tourniquet above that. So to use this, I'm going to make one initial wrap so it'll stay on itself. And then with each successive wrap, I stretch it really tight and wrap it around. All right. And then with the next wrap, I do the same. And then with the next wrap, I do the same. And you just keep stretching and wrapping. Stretching and wrapping. I think I can get one more wrap. Now, what you're going to have to do is tuck it at the end. So I need to make a little space in between my last wrap and the other wraps. And when I come around, I tuck it under that one. And that holds it in place, and it's not going anywhere. All right, this is really tight and it hurts, so I'm going to take it off. I can also use this just for a pressure bandage. So if I have some gauze and I want to put that on the wound, but I don't want to sit there and hold it, I could use tape, which, you know, if your skin's wet, it's not going to stay very well. So I could instead just use this, and I still want to apply some pressure to it, but I don't make it as tight. So I apply some pressure, and I'm not wrapping it, or I'm not stretching it tight enough to get that tourniquet effect, but it's just snug. And then I'm coming around here and still tucking this end. Also, if you have a shoulder dislocation, you can use it to make a sling. If I can do this by myself, you can use it to make a sling. And if you have somebody that has twisted their ankle, you can use it as a wrap to provide some support for that ankle. So you'll see that there are multiple uses for this device. So I hope that you will consider adding this to your gear bag or to your dry bag. And if y'all have any questions, let me know. Thanks.